Every day, you're exposed to behaviors that undermine your authority, your focus, and your future. Tolerate them, and you will lose control, influence, and power. In this video, we'll expose 7 destructive behaviors you must ever accept if you want to lead, dominate, and survive in a world ruled by ambition and deception. Power begins in the mind of the governed long before it roots itself in the institutions of state. A throne is nothing more than ornamented wood until subjects collectively agree that it commands obedience. The wise ruler, therefore, treats perception as the first citadel to defend and the last rampart to yield. He cultivates a reputation that is at once awe-inspiring and inevitable awe-inspiring. So rivals think twice before striking inevitable, so followers do not imagine an alternative. The thought-aid is not a frivolous mask, but an instrument sharper than steel. When appearances falter, swords soon follow. To preserve that indispensable illusion, the prince shapes every public gesture, where he walks, whom he praises, tone of a decree, so that each detail whispers the same immutable message: I cannot be displaced. Control is the hidden skeleton beneath that public skin. Perception without real authority is theater, a candle liable to every gust. The sovereign secures the organs of force, soldiers loyal by pay or blood, informers who trade secrets for privilege, magistrates whose careers depend upon the palace, and positions them where dissent is most likely to germinate. These instruments are never idle. Inertia in power is rot. Patrols vary their routes so conspiracy cannot mark safe hours, while tax collectors appear suddenly after festivals. Pockets are light and memories of revelry still cloud judgment, ensuring that duty and pleasure are incongruously wedded beneath the same emblem of control. Yet force is expensive and breeds resentment if wielded crudely. More subtle is the manipulation of hopes and fears. The court announces a new granary months before famine is expected, not to feed the people but to feed their expectation that sustenance will arrive only through the prince's foresight. A public trial of a minor traitor is staged shortly after, reminding spectators that gratitude and dread both flow from a single source. Thus perception, carefully scripted, is reinforced by an undercurrent of carefully rationed menace. Weakness breeds contempt, and nothing signals weakness more plainly than a ruler who attempts to cajole rather than command. Better to arrange events so that obedience feels like self-preservation. To troll also means deciding who sees what. Knowledge, like currency, can inflate. If everyone possesses it, its value collapses. The sovereign parcels out information with the same deliberation he applies to coins from the treasury. High officers know just enough to carry out orders, but not enough to conspire. Merchants receive rumors of future trade policies, timed to encourage investment that will make them complicit in the realm's prosperity. Ambitious scholars are invited to translate foreign texts glorifying ancient empires, on the condition that prefaces praise the present dynasty. Through such calibrated distribution, the ruler keeps many eyes fixed upon him while ensuring that none see the full map. Disorder grows if left unchecked. Therefore, even the perception of disorder must be strangled in its crib. Street quarrels are settled by swift and visible justice. Dilapidated walls in the capital are repaired overnight, for a crumbling facade suggests a crumbling regime. The sovereign walks among the people only in triumphal processions, never in moments of uncertainty. Should plague strike, he withdraws behind austere gates, allowing ministers to bear the stench of misfortune, then reappears bearing cures once the crisis abates. The people come to associate calamity with his absence and restoration with his return. Their minds weave cause and consequence in precisely the pattern he desires. Observe also how the prince weaponizes mercy. A leader must know when to use cruelty, but mercy, sparingly applied, magnifies reputation more than constant leniency ever could. To pardon a repentant noble after 3 lesser conspirators have been executed paints the sovereign as discerning, not indulgent. Mercy is staged publicly, cruelty often in whispers. Both outcomes circulate through gossip like twin blades carving the same emblem, one edge gleaming, the other coated in invisible poison. Subjects, uncertain which blade awaits them, default to compliance. Perception cannot be static. The populace grows numb to any single spectacle, just as a bell rung daily becomes background noise. The ruler refreshes symbols with calculated novelty. Today, a monument rises celebrating a distant victory. Tomorrow, a festival commemorates an ancient myth subtly paralleling his own ascent. Even the coinage changes, one year bearing the image of a lion, the next a phoenix, each creature chosen to evoke strength or rebirth as suits the political season. By the time the masses begin to question yesterday's emblem, today's has already occupied their imagination. Control must likewise evolve. Bureaucrats accumulate power through routine. If left unshaken, they transform procedure into private kingdom. The sovereign rotates offices, promoting talent from unexpected quarters, ensuring that gratitude flows upward rather than sideways. Military captains who linger too long with veterans form bonds stronger than loyalty to the throne. They are reassigned just before admiration turns to allegiance. Coinage, festivals, appointments. Each lever of control is adjusted with the precision of a clockmaker, preventing any single cog from imagining itself the center of the mechanism. Nothing erodes perception faster than visible hesitation. A policy announced and retracted crafts an image of fumbling incompetence. Therefore, the ruler decides in private but proclaims in thunder. If intelligence is incomplete, he issues a provisional measure framed as temporary emergency law, reserving the right to extend it indefinitely. Appear decisive first, refine later. Should error surface, blame is directed at subordinates already marked for removal, and their fall becomes yet another display of uncompromising resolve. The spectacle of punishment reminds spectators that authority is self-correcting only through severity, not apology. Amid all this, the sovereign never forgets that perception flows outward from a single heart, his own. Private doubts infect public gestures. If the ruler fears a rival, his eyes betray calculation, and courtiers will siphon confidence. He cultivates an internal fortress of certainty, feeding it with ritual, morning consults with loyal counselors, readings of chronicles proclaiming the doom of tentative princes, solitary walks where he rehearses the visage of serene inevitability. By mastering himself, he masters the stage, for the audience is attuned to tremors more delicate than words. In this way, perception is forged within and projected without, a seamless illusion carrying the force of tangible walls. Every realm, whether a sprawling empire or a modest household, rests upon invisible threads of expectation. Those below expect firmness from those above, just as children instinctively trust a parent to bar the door against the night. When that firmness wavers, contempt seeps in like damp through stone. The first sign is subtle, a lowered voice that carries a joke at the leader's expense, a sideways glance exchanged between subordinates who once averted their eyes. Contempt is not born full-grown. It germinates in the smallest evidences of fragility. The ruler who indulges even a moment of self-pity invites men to measure the throne against their own ambitions, to test its joints for cracks, finding them, to widen those cracks with practiced fingers until the entire edifice groans. Weakness often masquerades as virtue. The prince who cannot say no drapes himself in words such as compassion, tolerance, or flexibility, yet the court recognizes the costume. They learn that edicts can be softened by tears, that a trembling chin predicts a pardon, and that laws declared in trumpet fanfare will be amended at the first whimper of protest. From that discovery arises a hierarchy inverse to supplicants instruct sovereigns, criminals lecture judges, and the loudest rumor becomes the empire's new policy. A realm so governed is governed by its least disciplined voices, for weakness inevitably empowers the shrillest tongues. Observe what happens when leniency becomes habit rather than strategy. A captain who abandons his post during battle should hang, not merely for his own dereliction, but to nail a warning upon the conscience of every soldier who might one day contemplate flight. Spare him, and the army drinks a tonic of cowardice. Each man, believing that mercy is guaranteed, calculates how soon he may desert without paying the due price. Wheels of calculation turn in the barracks at night, and by dawn loyalty has been traded for survival. The prince who then demands sacrifice discovers that an army grown accustomed to gifts of clemency will not bleed for him when the horizon darkens with invaders. Even within the silk-lined corridors of state, indecision corrodes faster than betrayal. A minister who alters course with each rumor may imagine himself prudent, but his vacillation signals to rivals that he can be nudged, bullied, or bought. Meetings lengthen into labyrinths of hesitation. Memos return annotated in opposite inks from one day to the next. Eventually, subordinates cease to seek instruction at all, for they believe that instruction will be reversed by nightfall. Thus, authority dissolves not in rebellion, but in a fog of perpetual maybe. The bureaucracy, starving for certainty, begins to improvise its own rules, and in those improvised spaces corruption nests comfortably. Respect once lost cannot be purchased back at original price. The sovereign who finally awakens to the stench of ridicule and attempts severity finds that his lash is laughed at. Because he punished slowly in the past, swiftness now appears ridiculous. Because he pardoned generously, any execution now seems capricious. Subjects compare the new face to the old and decide both are masks. They gossip that he feigns toughness to hide trembling knees. Where once obedience sprang from reverence, only resentment remains, and resentment obeys as little as fire responds to gentle rain. Signs of impending contempt announce themselves in the behavior of allies long before enemies take open advantage. A loyal noble begins to arrive late, pleading plausible excuses, A merchant delays tribute because inspectors are rumored lax. These infractions seem minor until multiplied by 100 actors across the land. The wise ruler tracks such tremors as carefully as astronomers watch shifting stars. A single tardy envoy might be overlooked, but a pattern of tardiness signals that clocks everywhere have been reset to a new standard. One indifferent to the sovereign's time. Immediate correction is vital, for each unchecked slight adjusts the limits of permissible insolence. Yet strength cannot be performed by volume alone. Shouting is the music of insecurity. Consider a ruler who blusters in every council, pounding tables to command attention. Subordinates learn to withstand the gale, knowing that thunder often comes unaccompanied by lightning. Soon they attend meetings armed with smiles and secretaries, prepared to draft apologies the moment the storm passes. Better to speak with measured calm and strike rarely but irreversibly, so that each sentence carries the weight of an unspoken sword. Fear birthed from unpredictability fades. Fear rooted in consistent consequences thrives. Some believe generosity inspires loyalty more reliably than fear. They misunderstand generosity's purpose. A well-timed boon is a rope. It binds the recipient's fortunes to the throne, making betrayal costlier than obedience. But generosity loses its bite when distributed indiscriminately. Shower a restless province with concessions, and its governor will view gifts as confirmation that rebellion yields rewards. True charity must preserve the hierarchy it seeks to embellish, cannot erode the distinction between giver and receiver. Therefore, every favor must include an implicit reminder that it could be withdrawn. Contempt blooms fastest where equality is preached without preparation. When soldiers are suddenly told they may address their commander by familiar name, camaraderie flickers bright for an hour, then dulls. Soon the line between suggestion and order blurs, and discipline, deprived of its scaffold, collapses into fraternal bickering. Hierarchy is the spine of collective action. Remove it abruptly, and the body convulses. A wise commander, desiring rapport, hosts feasts in which he sits among troops, yet remains at the table's head. Thus he invites warmth without surrendering altitude, demonstrating that approachability is not the abdication of command. Weakness also creeps in through sentimental attachment to traditions unfit for present danger. Kingdom encircled by newer weapons cannot cling to ancestral spears out of nostalgic pride. If the prince refuses to discard relics because they bear his forefathers' crests, he sentences his descendants to extinction. The court, recognizing his reluctance, will indulge him publicly while mocking him privately, and the enemy, ever observant, will adjust its assault to exploit sentimental blind spots. Adaptation signals vigor. Refusal to adapt is merely another form of frailty masquerading as honor. Disorder begins not with fire and swords, but with murmurs. It takes root in whispers exchanged beneath banners, in looks passed between guards when the ruler's back is turned. It often hides behind the veil of routine. An official who delays orders without explanation, a magistrate who shows leniency to a well-connected criminal, a soldier who scowls during a parade. These are not yet acts of defiance, but they are the soil in which defiance will grow if not cut down at the root. The ruler who mistakes early disorder for harmless deviation is not merciful. He is negligent, and his negligence breeds rot in the foundation of power. To allow the minor infraction is to give birth to the major one. A tax officer who pockets a coin here and there without punishment becomes the model for a chain of theft. A minor noble who ignores protocol and is not reprimanded will soon seek a position not granted, but taken. From these tolerated missteps arises a new code, written not by the sovereign's hand, but by the accumulated actions of those beneath him. A kingdom ruled by precedent rather than command ceases to be a kingdom at all. It becomes a negotiation, and negotiation is merely the polite name for a war of expectations. The ruler must remain the sole author of law, not its editor reacting to drafts composed by the court. Disorder flourishes in the absence of consequence. The idea that justice may be delayed or worse, bargained with, transforms wrongdoing from a risk into a strategy. Those who test the boundaries of law and receive nothing more than a warning begin to believe that the law is ornamental, a mask worn for ceremony, not a blade wielded for control. When punishment is rare or inconsistent, subjects interpret leniency as license. They do not see the sovereign's kindness. They see his absence. They begin to fill the space left behind with their own ambitions, their own codes, their own authority. There is no such thing as isolated disorder. Every breach creates echoes. A rebellious city on one frontier will become a symbol for every discontented faction across the realm. If it is not crushed quickly, its very survival becomes a beacon. Others take up its cause not for belief, but for the opportunity its defiance represents. Disorder, when visible, becomes contagious. The longer it persists, the harder it becomes to stamp out. because each day it continues, more people come to believe that it may succeed. In this way, delay is not caution, it is permission. A sovereign may be tempted to ignore early signs of chaos, telling himself they are minor, that his rule is strong enough to absorb the shock. This is vanity disguised as prudence. A crack in the dam, left unrepaired, does not remain a crack. It becomes a flood. History does not remember rulers who prevented disasters it never saw. It remembers those who fell to ones they allowed to grow unchecked. The wise sovereign therefore crushes the seed of sedition before it can flower. His hand is not slow, it is exact. He does not lash out blindly, but when he strikes, he makes sure the blow is final, not theatrical. Control is not maintained through optimism. It is maintained through vigilance. The ruler must know not only the laws of his land, but the temper of his people, the habits of his officers, and the weaknesses of his court. When a dispute arises between nobles, he must investigate not only the words they speak, but the loyalties they do not declare. A grumbling merchant might be more dangerous than an armed rebel if his grievance spreads like poison among the urban masses. Disorder wears many faces. Some are loud and armed, others are quiet and calculating. Both are equally lethal when ignored. Rituals and customs can become cloaks for corruption. When forms are followed without substance, disorder hides behind ceremony. A council that meets regularly but makes no decisions is a breeding ground for intrigue. A garrison that drills daily but lacks real discipline becomes a danger in waiting. Sovereign must penetrate the surface of rituals to see whether they are alive or hollow. Where he finds emptiness, he must either fill it with real authority or strip it away entirely. Better no tradition than one that pretends to serve order while serving chaos. The pretense of peace is sometimes more dangerous than open conflict. A city may appear calm while seething with resentment. Courtiers may bow low while sharpening daggers in private. Disorder that simmers is more dangerous than disorder that erupts because it seduces the sovereign into false confidence. He believes he has avoided rebellion when he has only postponed it. The wise ruler sends his eyes where his presence cannot go. Spies, informers, and loyal servants must carry back not only reports of action, but whispers of intention. Where intention turns dark, action soon follows. Delays in judgment, however well-intentioned, feed confusion. The people must know that their ruler does not waver. If a law is passed, it must be enforced. If rebellion is detected, it must be extinguished. If guilt is proven, punishment must be seen. Justice, when invisible, is meaningless. Disorder grows fastest where consequence is least visible. A ruler who acts swiftly once but then hesitates the next time teaches his subjects that justice is negotiable. They begin to test the pattern, seeking out the inconsistencies, and shaping their misdeeds to slip through the cracks. Those who profit from disorder will always claim innocence. They will cloak their defiance in piety, in service, in tradition. They will present rebellion as reform and chaos as a correction. The sovereign must pierce through such disguises. He must recognize that many who speak of liberty seek only license for themselves. When one man refuses to obey in the name of justice, others will soon disobey in the name of example. Tolerate one false grievance, and you will soon be drowning in 1,000 genuine revolts. Leadership is not the art of being loved. It is the science of being obeyed. A ruler who desires only the affection of his people, who seeks harmony above order, soon finds himself ruled by their whims. Men admire kindness in poetry, but in politics they test its limits. The sovereign who cannot bring himself to act with cruelty when necessary becomes a hostage to those who can. He mistakes softness for strength, forgetting that mercy granted at the wrong moment is not virtue but betrayal. Betrayal of the loyal, betrayal of the law, betrayal of the realm. Cruelty, when applied with precision, is not savagery but strategy. The goal is never suffering for its own sake, but the preservation of order, stability, and power. The wise ruler understands that one sharp, public act of discipline, executed swiftly and with reason, may prevent 1,000 secret acts of treason. A single punishment, properly displayed, serves as a warning etched into memory. It teaches not only the punished but all who witness, all who whisper behind walls, that certain lines will not be crossed twice. The terror such a moment instills becomes a safeguard stronger than iron gates. There is no chaos more dangerous than one that stems from uncertainty. When subjects do not know what action invites punishment, they begin to gamble. When officers are unsure whether betrayal will be overlooked for political convenience, they begin to weigh their loyalties in coin. Generals think they can fail without consequence. They march into battle half-hearted. Cruelty, when it follows a clear pattern, removes such doubt. It becomes a law of nature within the realm, inevitable, cold, impartial. Subjects learn not to test the system because the cost is fixed, not negotiable. Timing of cruelty is as vital as its execution. If delayed too long, it appears reactive, born of weakness or revenge. If applied too early or too frequently, it invites fear without respect and rebellion without hesitation. The sovereign must learn to strike at the precise moment, when the infraction becomes a threat, but before it becomes a movement. He does not wait for fire to engulf the palace before extinguishing a spark in the corridor. Cruelty is not merely an act. It is a signal. It communicates that the ruler is present, aware, and decisive. Some men will argue that cruelty undermines legitimacy. They speak of hearts and minds, of winning trust through leniency and persuasion. But trust is not the foundation of rule. It is a luxury granted only after power has been secured. Without the means to compel obedience, trust becomes mockery. Without the readiness to punish, persuasion is theater. Even love must be earned through fear, for the masses love only what protects them, and protection in times of danger comes from steel, not sentiment. There is also cruelty in omission, and it is no less lethal. A ruler who allows lawbreakers to thrive, who tolerates corruption, who fails to punish betrayal, commits cruelty against the innocent. He burdens the loyal with the consequences of others' disobedience. He teaches the virtuous that their efforts are unrewarded, and he teaches the wicked that they may profit without penalty. In such a system, the entire moral order of the realm collapses. Honest men grow silent, ambitious men grow bold, and the sovereign finds himself surrounded by flatterers and thieves. But cruelty must always be justified, not explained, but demonstrated through effect. The people do not require the ruler to offer speeches about his intentions. They require that his actions result in peace, prosperity, and predictability. If the public hangings of a few thieves lead to safe roads and honest markets, no one questions the rope. If the execution of a corrupt minister results in justice for the poor, no one mourns his fall. The sovereign's cruelty becomes righteous not through rhetoric but through outcome. When subjects see that order is maintained, they cease to care about the cost, provided they do not bear it themselves. Cruelty is also a form of mercy. Mercy to the whole by sacrifice of the part. To spare one traitor may endanger the lives of thousands. To forgive a cowardly general may invite foreign conquest. The sovereign must weigh each case not by the tears it provokes, but by the consequences it prevents. He must train himself to look upon the individual not as a soul to be redeemed, but as a piece in a larger design. The life of a single man, if left unchecked, can topple a kingdom. One infected limb, left attached out of sentiment, will poison the body. Even in the court, where smiling faces and polished words mask ambition, cruelty has its place. The sovereign who tolerates disloyalty within his inner circle breeds contempt. A single whisper of betrayal must be followed by immediate removal, public or private, for hesitation breeds imitation. Ministers who betray trust must not only be dismissed but discredited, for their downfall must teach others the price of duplicity. A ruler who cannot clean his own house cannot claim to rule a nation. Loyalty is not assumed, it is enforced. The prince who masters cruelty becomes immune to manipulation. Subjects quickly learn that pleas, bribes, and tears hold no sway against firm judgment. They cease to attempt to bend his will, and instead bend themselves to match it. This obedience is the foundation of order. It is not enough to be admired, or even respected. The ruler must be obeyed. Obedience cannot be left to chance. It must be carved into habit, reinforced by fear, polished by ritual, and sealed through the memory of consequences. Power, like a fortress, does not collapse from a single blow, but from neglect of the stones that hold it firm. The behaviors we have uncovered, betrayal disguised as loyalty, weakness mistaken for virtue, disorder allowed to ferment, cruelty misunderstood or misused, are not merely flaws of character. They are termites in the beams of sovereignty. A ruler, whether of a nation, a company, or even a household, must remain vigilant, not just in what he commands but in what he tolerates. The moment he accepts what he should reject, forgives what he should punish, or delays when he should act, he trades tomorrow's authority for today's comfort. What we have explored is not a lesson in tyranny, but in survival. The successful leader is not the one who tries to please all, nor the one who rules by blind fear, but the one who understands when to be feared, when to be firm, and when to be swift. He does not flinch in the face of hard decisions, and he does not let sentiment become the architect of his policy. He cuts when he must, not because he enjoys the blade, but because rot, if left alone, spreads faster than justice can catch it. In a world where chaos waits just beyond the gate, where rivals whisper and followers watch, true leadership demands not just vision, but vigilance, not just compassion, but calculation, and above all, the courage to be ruthless in defense of order, loyalty, and the realm itself. For in leadership, what you tolerate is what you teach, and what you ignore is what will rise to rule in your place.